Hi everyone, I'm Harry. I'm a design manager here at Atlassian. I'm joined today by my colleague Kun, our lead engineer, and by Jakan, head of engineering for Stasic. We are here today to talk to you about AI-assisted development to accelerate software delivery, which is a bit of a mouthful to read out like that, but we picked that title because we know that it's a topic top of mind for many of you here and for your teams back home. We have about 40 minutes together today. We're going to share our approach and thinking. We'll walk through some demos. Kun will share more detail on how it all works. And then Jakan will join us on stage for a discussion about the space more broadly. And then finally, we'll also share how you can get early access to it all as well. Okay, so if you're here in this room or you're watching this online, you're probably building or managing software of some kind. And if you are, developer experience is important for you, your team, your organization, more broadly as well. There's no accelerating software development without focusing on it. In our recent State of DevX report, we heard that 63% of developers think experience is important. That's not surprising, they're developers. I'm a designer, I think design experience is pretty important as well. But more interesting, though, is that 86% of leaders think it's important as well. But only 23% of developers are actually satisfied with the investment and the improvements so far. So there's this big gap. Developers are telling us over and over their days are filled with friction, high effort spent on tedious tasks, broken flow, and general frustration. It's not good. And it's worse if you look across developers as well, because that shows up as teams with coordination challenges, mountains of tech debt, and trouble delivering on time, budget, or to expectations. That's not good either. Even worse, that of course happens across teams, so you end up with organizations that are then failing to deliver with low productivity, less innovation, and ultimately a weaker business, which nobody wants. Put simply, it's really important, but getting it right is really hard. There's more work to be done to help. And while Atlassian's system of work helps address many of these problems in different ways, when we look at how to accelerate software delivery, we think we need to start at the start with developers. And so that's what we've done, targeting these areas, the core bits of friction in the daily developer experience. For this first area around high effort and low motivation, when you dig into that, there's a lot of commentary on small, tedious tasks that are still necessary. These are not the kinds of tasks that developers are enthusiastic about. These are not the best use of their valuable time, which makes them the perfect kind of task for AI to handle for them. To help here, we have our new AI agent we like to call AutoDev. AutoDev will show up on issues that it can help with. These are issues that are appropriately sized with just enough context for it to be able to build off. When directed, AutoDev will review the issue details, the code base, any other relevant context. The developer can then optionally add any further context that might be helpful, and they can tell AutoDev to start planning. AutoDev will then build out an overall plan using its knowledge of the requirements and the code base, noting the specific files and the tasks that it intends to do within those files. The developer can then add any specific instructions, modify the overall plan if needed to. In this case, asking for error handling, and AutoDev changes the plan, adding a new instruction to the right file. When ready, the developer can tell it to get started coding, where code streams in as AutoDev writes it. And when done, the developer can review its work and make any necessary updates there as well. Once satisfied, the developer can automatically create a PR from Jira that shows up in Bitbucket or GitHub, and just like that, they have a pull request that's ready for review. So as we've seen here, AutoDev can work with the developer as a partner to move work forward, which is pretty amazing. But it's not hard to imagine automating this process a little bit more as AutoDev becomes more capable too. Agents are easier currently to clone than humans, so we can imagine the developer lining up small tasks for AutoDev to work on in parallel as well. Then the developer can review that work, make any necessary changes, and move it to PR for their team to review and merge into the code base. This makes the coding stage significantly faster, but it does shift the bottleneck to the review stage as more code is written as well. Which brings us to the second focus area and demo. So for long feedback loops and high cognitive load, when we dig into that, there's a lot of commentary on code review in general. That's the greatest bottleneck in pretty much every software team that does it, and it's going to get worse as more code is written. But we've got something for that too. So meet Auto Review. Auto Review is our AI agent that helps speed up and lighten the load on code review. Here we have a PR that a developer's just submitted for review, and Auto Review has automatically passed through the code, identified and prioritized problems, and made 3 suggestions for the developer to review. In this case, it suggests a clearer and more resilient approach that reduces the total lines of code, and the developer can revise with Auto Review or accept the suggestion as is. Given this suggestion looks pretty good, they hit accept, and then Auto Review will update the file, making the change for them, significantly shortening the PR review process and improving code quality. So we've seen Auto Review make comments and code suggestions there, but we think there's more that we can do to help both the author and the PR reviewers too. It's not hard to imagine a summary, like an overview, scorecard, or areas to focus on, with major issues and suggestions to fix called out prominently, easy to action, while those more minor issues are visible and noted appropriately too. We've got a lot of ideas here, and we're excited to hear yours as well. And then finally, on a high friction and broken flow, the commentary here is commonly around keeping track of information, providing updates in many places, and context switching constantly. We think that we can help here too, bringing all of your company's knowledge right into the IDE as well. Here we have a developer using GitHub Copilot, taking inline suggestions and asking Copilot about its code base. It's great, but wouldn't it be even better if you could get information about more than just the code? Using Rovo, they can access their company's knowledge right within the IDE. Here they ask a question about edge cases they need to consider. Rovo-based answers based on its knowledge of their work, their team, their code base, and their broader company's knowledge, and surfaces an answer. And it's all just there. So there's no switching tabs or searching through docs. They can stay in their flow. We have a lot of ideas here too, but it's not hard to imagine sort of richer preview experiences or being able to take action right from the IDE as well. So creating issues or pages, making updates, providing status updates in Jira without having to switch out to Jira. And with that, I'm going to welcome Kun to the stage, and he's going to tell you all about how this works in a bit more detail.
Thank you, Harry. Hi, everyone. My name is Kun. I'm a lead developer working closely with Harry on our AI agents for software developers. Another way of introducing my role is that I work with software developers to build software that uses AI to help developers build software. Now, let's get right into how we do that. First of all, I'm proud to share that Atlassian's AutoDev has state-of-the-art performance on SweBench, which is an external benchmark widely used to assess how well an AI agent can solve real-world engineering problems. This chart shows how AutoDev compares with top-performing solutions reported by OpenAI in their recent announcement of the SweBench verified datasets. We're working very hard to bring one of the world's best AI agents to help your software engineering teams get work done. When we first started designing our AI agents for software developers, AI has already started helping developers by writing code, by offering code completion when developers write code in their IDE. However, AI code completion products can only help developers within one single code file at a time. Developers will open up a code file they want to edit, start to make some changes, and then AI will suggest a little bit more. This is helpful, but we know it's often not enough to complete a task. We'd like to create an AI agent that can look at a Jira issue and generate a full, complete working solution. we knew that this required the agent to operate at a repository level. It needs to understand the code base, understand the file and classes and functions and the relationships between them in order to solve problems that require a solution that span across multiple files. To tackle this problem, we built something we call the code graph. Before AutoDev starts to work on a task, it will first scan the code repository, parse each code file, and understand what's in it. Through this understanding, AutoDev then builds a holistic graph that represents all the important entities in the code base and their relationships with each other. This code graph then empowers AutoDev to navigate the code base, look up function definitions and type definitions, find references to symbols effectively, just like what we do as developers. This is a foundational building block that allows AutoDev to operate at a repository level and generate complete working solutions to engineering tasks that require a cohesive set of edits across files. The same technology also empowers auto-review as well, to allow auto-review to have the awareness of the entire code base and can assist developers with that knowledge. An AI agent that understands your code base is great, but we would like for AutoDev and auto-review to do even more. We know that building software is not just writing code. It's also about understanding the business context of why we do what we do, the project context of what needs to be done, and being aware of the team context of how we run things, and having access to the operational context of what's actually happening in production. To do that, in addition to the code graph, we also equipped our AI agents with the teamwork graph. Equipped with the code graph and teamwork graph, our agents can perform tasks in a multi-stage workflow. Take AutoDev as an example. It first does some planning to figure out which files in the code base are relevant to the task and what kind of changes needs to be made on each of them. AutoDev will then go into its coding stage and use large language models to generate the code edits required to complete the task according to the plan. Once a draft code change is made, AutoDev will then try to run the compiler, linter, and test cases just like what we do as developers to validate the change. If problems are found during validation, AutoDev will try to self-correct so that it can produce a working solution. All those steps get executed by an agent assigned to the task. The agent will run inside of a secure sandbox, which will make sure each task is done in isolation to each other. No data gets leaked between tasks, and each agent will have sufficient resources provisioned to complete the task without being interfered by other agents. So as a recap, we equip the AI agents with code graph and teamwork graph. And the agents run a multi-stage workflow inside of a secure sandbox. But how are we taking this further? We have a great team of talented developers making improvements to the system all the time. One of the interesting challenges of building AI agents with large language models was simply knowing which changes are actually improvements and which ones are not. This requires that we rigorously evaluate every single effect of every single change we make. When we have a team of developers all moving extremely fast on their work, keeping this rigor can be challenging, as evaluation can be costly and slow. We solved this challenge by building a world-class AI experimentation system powered by Stasic. Our team would constantly analyze gaps in our system and formulate hypotheses for how we can improve them. We would then create an experiment to validate each of our hypotheses by running A/B testing and comparing the outcome with the change applied versus not. At the end of each experiment, we get a comprehensive scorecard to allow us to learn every effect caused by the change, so we can validate or reject our hypothesis, catch unintended regressions, and understand trade-offs. Was this change improving our output quality? Did it reduce our cost of calling large language models? Is it increasing the end-to-end latency of our product? By understanding the effects of our changes rigorously through experimentation, we became very good at adding up lots and lots of improvements, big or small, and see them compound on top of each other. That resulted in a high-quality product that can deliver great value to our customers. Speaking of experimentation, we actually have Stasic with us here today to have a fireside chat. For those who don't know, Stasic is a company that has built a great experimentation platform to help companies of all sizes make data-driven decisions. Stasic is also one of the first customers who have got early access to AutoDev and AutoReview. Please welcome Harry back on stage, and also Jakan, Head of Engineering from Stasic, to join us for a chat.
Okay, thank you, Kun, and welcome, Jakan. So speaking, sorry, we lost our thing. So to start us off, many companies like Atlassian have started building products with AI. How should teams be thinking about AI and experimentation?
Yeah, so the way that I think about experimentation is that when you are building a product, experimentation is probably one of the most effective way for you to Test 1, 2, 3. Oh, there we go.
Bit of a difference.
That makes sense. All right. So when I think about experimentation in product building, I would say experimentation is probably one of the most effective ways for you to communicate with your customers. No matter how good of a product sense that you have, you don't represent most of your customers. And even if you do, how do you make sure that your teams who are making decisions on a day-to-day basis can do that, right? So the best way is to actually experiment, test the features that you're building, making sure they actually give you the right business impact for your customers before you decide to ship your features to everyone. Now that applies to AI. When you are building AI features into your product, it still applies. And I would say it actually applies even more so because AI models to a lot of us are kind of like this black box in a way. You don't really understand what you're tweaking is going to lead to what outcome. You have a hypothesis, but you need to test in order to actually validate that. You also don't know how your users will perceive these new shiny AI features. So you have to test to make sure that you understand that's doing the right thing for you. So I would say, think about experimentation as the way you understand AI, understand your user, how they think about AI, in order to make the right decisions for your product. Yeah.
We definitely see some of that from our experience building AI products here. So we have countless examples where we had an idea, we thought it's totally going to work, it's going to be awesome. And then we ran the experiments. When we saw the results, it's actually quite surprising. There are many times there were unintended trade-offs that we wouldn't anticipate before you ran the experiment. So that's definitely important to use experimentation to really understand the effects of the changes that we make. Large language models also are kind of unique because their behaviors are indeterministic. So unlike traditional software development where we can use test cases, we can use unit test and integration test cases to help us catch errors. We run this test case, and if it's passing, then it's good. Building with large language models is different because this case working well for once doesn't mean it will always work well for other use cases, for other real customers using the product. So building a really robust evaluation process is also comes into the picture here.
Great. So what are some common challenges you see for teams adopting these data-driven processes for building AI?
Right. So we work with a lot of customers who run experiments at a daily basis, and have been in the past couple of years. They've been thinking about building AI products into their product, right? Some of them are actually tweaking the models. OpenAI, Anthropic, those are our customers as well. They are like just making changes to the models that they have. But a lot of them are just like adding new features to their product, and the hope is to drive retention, right? Like you have good features that will guide your users to do the right thing in the long term, it will like increase the retention. But oftentimes the challenge is that teams who are focusing on building the features, they lose sight on what is the actual business outcome they want to drive. A classic example is I was talking to a customer who were trying to build a virtual assistant into their app. So the team spent a lot of time just tweaking the model, the parameters, the prompts to make sure the accuracy of the response from the virtual assistant is actually improving over time. That takes a lot of effort, iterations, and it costs the company money. But it didn't actually lead to a lot of long-term retention win. But the most effective, most impactful experiment the team ran was actually an idea from a PM that they had, who basically said, there are lists of questions that the assistant is able to answer very well. Why don't we guide the users to ask those questions, have them avoid the ones where the AI cannot answer very well today? So they made some product changes to guide the user into, hey, these are the things that our virtual assistant can help you with. And that actually is a pretty simple change and led to a very, very high retention win for the users, because the users end up getting what they need, and they start using that feature more and more, and they started using the product more and more. So I would say, focusing on the right metric, not focusing on the right business outcome is probably one of the most common challenges I've seen.
Yeah, you touched on a really interesting point, Jakan. And in our experience, our metrics also evolved along with our journey. So in the beginning, when we were just building the products, before we launched the product, we don't have real users yet. So without real users giving the online signals to give us feedback on whether things are moving in the right direction versus not, we had to build an offline evaluation process so that we can iterate and make sure we have confidence in the quality of our product before we launch it. But once the product is launched, then we have users using the product. Then we get online signals from users' behavior that can allow us to create a new set of metrics that can better align with the business outcome. So the metric and how we measure the product evolved over time as the product goes through different stages.
Yeah, and sometimes like the results from offline evaluation probably does not necessarily map to what actually happens online, right?
Yeah. Right, exactly. And oftentimes what we have to do is to constantly iterate on the offline evaluation process to make it align better with what we are actually seeing online.
Great. So could you tell us a bit more about like how Stasic is helping address some of those challenges?
Yeah. So as a experimentation platform ourselves, it's actually core to our product that you have a solid hypothesis that you are going into the experiment, like what change you are making and what outcome you want to drive. So building into the product, we have sections that are up front and center, asking you what's your hypothesis, what's your primary/success metrics, and what are a bunch of metrics that you also want to monitor while you're testing, like guardrail metrics. Are you regressing latency? Are you regressing CPU usage? Those kind of stuff. Just to make sure everyone has that in mind when they're running experiments. And you can apply that to every experiment in the company, so that people are not losing focus because you're distributing the decision-making process to everyone on your team. We're also looking into features that can enable developers or teams who are just thinking about building AI features into their product as well. We have this new feature that we're just releasing called prompt experiments. Basically, you give us a prompt of what is the current prompt for your feature, and then we'll come up with new prompts that you should test according to that would help you test whether this will give you better outcome. So those are the areas that we're thinking about and what we already have today.
Yeah, great. So with AI products starting to show promise, have you started adopting AI in your teams and workflows, and how?
Yeah, totally. We have started a while ago, and we are always adding new set of AI tools into our day-to-day workflow. So I work on a team that's very customer-facing, and because our product is very technical, it actually requires a lot of. We respond to a lot of customer requests and questions. So one use case is we have a chatbot that like responds to customers' technical questions. It uses our documentation, our code base, and the history of other customer interactions to form an answer to customers when they have a question for us on Slack. And then if the customer decides, hey, this question is good, that will reinforce the AI model that we have that this is actually a good answer. But if it's not, it would do the same, and also our team will then get onto the question and then provide additional helpful answers. Our developers also have been using tools like Copilot to aid them to write code faster. For me, I used to spend a lot of time coding, not anymore today, but like I was working at SDKs. We have like 20 different languages that we support. I'm not expert on all of those languages, but like, those kind of tooling help me a lot when I need a code snippet to do something in a language I'm not like the most familiar with, which has been very helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, so these are definitely pretty commonly seen from our teams as well, Copilot helping developers write code faster. So I know that recently Stasic got early access to our auto dev and auto review, these agentic solutions. So I'm very curious to hear your thoughts about how these products fit into the workflow.
Yeah, it's actually pretty amazing to see how much the auto dev and the auto review features have evolved over the last just couple months without actually many users, right? Because it's still in early beta testing, and you don't have that many real users, but offline experimentation, how much you have evolved the product, and give me hope that this can be actual very solid wins for productivity for the teams. Like one example is, I mentioned I don't write that much code anymore, but I give a lot of product feedback to the team. Sometimes I will want to change a copy, and before I would just like, I have to write a post internally to say, hey, this is something that I think we can improve in terms of documentation, what we say in the tool that explain to user what the feature does. I would love to change that. But because I don't actually write code there, like it takes a while for the team to get the right prioritization, write code, get it reviewed, and then land the PR into production. Today, I can really just like create a Jira ticket, tell it, hey, I want to change this copy here for this setting to be something else, and then it will create the PR for me. I can just like have someone stamp the PR because it's a simple change without going through all that cycle of waiting and making sure people are prioritizing it, right? So I can see this being very, very helpful for not just developers, but also folks that like PM designers who want to get things done without having to rely on engineer resource getting blocked. Same thing with review as well. Like our company is very productive. We write a lot of PRs every week. We're actually getting bottlenecked by reviews. I would love for us to adopt auto review to be able to unblock some of the I guess easier to review diffs, we call it diffs PRs first, so that people have some success, start using that more and more, and be able to actually, not be blocked by that. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Do you have any other sort of tips or recommendations for teams that want to start building with AI?
Yeah, good question. I would say like my number one advice is to making sure that your teams are finding success. Because it's kind of similar to the example I gave earlier where the company who's adding the virtual assistant into their tool, the most impactful feature they did was to making sure their customer was finding success with this tool. So it's the same thing here where you want to make sure your developers are finding success with whatever they are trying first. So that positive reinforcement will encourage them to try more and more over time and expand their usage from some well-scoped areas into like bigger areas as the tool getting more robust and powerful. So if you are thinking about introducing AI to your team's workflow, try it. Find some scopes where you think the tool is actually performing well before delivering that to the rest of your company, rest of your teams, so that they know what to use it for, and they will be successful with that. Their productivity will increase, and they will trust the tools and start trying out more things over time. Yeah, I would say that's like probably my number one advice for folks. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Well, that's sort of the end of the fireside chat. So thank you for sharing your insights with us all. We've covered a lot today in this deep dive, but to wrap it up, I'll just simply sort of say we believe developer experience is important. It's at the root of many higher level problems that plague teams and organizations. Our efforts that we've shared here, they're just the start. We hope that you're as excited to use them and help us build them as we are to share them with you. For auto dev and auto review, you can visit this link or the QR code to sign up for early access. We'd love to get your thoughts and feedback. I'll pause for a moment if you want to take a photo. I think everyone's got it. And then for our Rovo-powered GitHub Copilot agent, you can find it in the Copilot marketplace or scan the QR code here as well. And with that, we'll wrap. So thank you, Kun and Jakan, for joining me on stage. Thank you to our teams for all your work and letting us share it here. And thank you all for listening. Enjoy the rest of the event.